Good morning, everyone. Thank you once again for being with us today as we talk about Operation Traffic Stop 2. This is the single largest undercover operation of its kind that we've worked in the history of the Sheriff's Office. That only would have been possible with these wonderful folks and their teams that joined us today. We talk about, but we not only talk the talk, we walk the talk, that working together as a team is the only way that this is possible. And these wonderful folks behind me are the commanders, and they sent their troops, and as a result, we had a banner, no pun intended, operation. Nicole Orr is with us today. She's with the State Attorney's Office. Brian Haas is our State Attorney. He's simply the very best. Nicole's one of the big bosses that will be handling all of the cases, her and her team. We also have with us Captain Sean Vance from the Lake County Sheriff's Office, Assistant Chief Marvin Tarver from the Lakeland Police Department, Chief Steve Parker from the Davenport Police Department, Chief Mike Teague from the Lake Hamilton Police Department, Chief Chris Velasquez from the Lake Wells Police Department, Chief David Brannon from the Winter Haven Police Department, Lieutenant John Cruz from the Auburndale Police Department, Chief Andy Ray from the Bartow Police Department. One of the things that's very important about these operations is that we immediately begin services to the victims of human trafficking, and that's our focus here. So we have prostitution stings, and the whole focus on this is so that we can find the victims of human trafficking. We could not do this without our partner organizations. We have Jody Domain with us today from One More Child. We have Sarah Backelder from Sail of Freedom, right? I'm from Polk County. I always mess that up. Y'all would be disappointed if I didn't mess that up every time, wouldn't you? Katie Ann Parchman from Heartland for Children. Sarah Rockwell from the Children's Advocacy Center. Also, the Department of Children and Families was at this operation, as you'll hear in a few minutes. DCF was very important because we had to rescue some children. I mean, it's not every good parent that lives life without bringing their child to a human trafficking op, right? They were with us as well. And of course, Dr. Mary Ann Thomas, My Name, My Voice. Thank you all for being here. They provide counseling services and will give you the detail immediately upon our arrest of folks, and they identify the victims of human trafficking for us. But let me give you some data before we get into the color. These folks represent 10 law enforcement agencies. We had a total of 219 arrests. 119 were for prostitution, 83 were for Johns, and there were 17 other arrests. We filed 242 misdemeanor charges, 44 felony charges. The criminal histories of the folks you see here include a total of 985 previous misdemeanor charges and 680 felony charges. So I don't want anyone to leave here today thinking, oh, these are all just innocent victims, because a lot of them are not innocent victims. A lot of them are criminals. Some of them are victims, and that will be pointed out to you. 2 were charged with human trafficking. Sometimes we work an entire operation without being able to identify the human trafficker because the ladies are scared to death of them. So we think it's a big, big deal that we actually were able to charge criminally 2 with human trafficking, and 2 others are under investigation. 35 of the subjects that we arrested were here illegally in the United States. Did you hear what I said? 35 of them should not have been in the United States, but they were. They were here as suspects, but they were also here as victims. They were forced, indentured into having to be here to pay off their transportation debt, among other issues. They came from 7 different countries: Cuba, Chile, Venezuela, Mexico, Guatemala, Colombia, and the Bahamas. It's important to understand that of those that were here illegally, 3 were victims of human trafficking, 18 were prostitutes that have not been confirmed, and 12 were Johns. But the thing that's most compelling to me, other than the fact that they're here illegally and they shouldn't be in our country, being a victim or victimizing others, was that they were paying off the coyote for their transportation. This is real. For those of you who think that the border issues only pertains to Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, you couldn't be more wrong. The border crisis is a crisis for every state in the union, and for a lot of victims, it is a border crisis. Seeing the increase in illegal aliens at every operation continues. We are seeing more numbers in every operation. And that should be great pause for the people across the United States. We also arrested 18 from other states: Alabama, California, Georgia, Illinois, Massachusetts, Maryland, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Wisconsin. Now, you always want to make your spouse happy. It really makes your spouse happy when you're able to announce to her, or we announce to her, because she usually, sometimes he, are looking for their loved ones. 41 of these folks were married. That's right. But they wanted to come do the wild thing with people who were not their spouses. 13 were on public assistance. That's right. You pay taxes into the government so we can have public assistance for those who need it. So a lot of these people were on the government dole with your tax money while they were here engaged in prostitution activity. 42 brought illegal drugs to include heroin and fentanyl, crack cocaine, methamphetamine, and as I always talk about, my favorite, cannabis. You know, all of those things some people want you to think are low level, nonviolent. I'm suggesting to you just the opposite. It's created a tragedy for a lot of these people's lives. But we wouldn't be complete without the color. First, I want to introduce you to Maria Guzman. She's here illegally. She's from Orlando. That's right, she's one of the human traffickers. You always think of the guys being human traffickers, but she is the one facing a first-degree felony charge, which is 30 years in prison. She's the one that was setting the appointments. She's the one that were prostituting 2 young ladies. She was taking 60 to 70% of their money. She first met them online when she said, "Hey, I'm looking for someone to work construction in the Orlando area," where the victims had met, the 2 victims had met at the border crossing in ICE custody, and they had gone to Minnesota. So then they flew back to work in construction. She just didn't define what construction meant. Yeah, they were going to construct sexual encounters. So as a result, they flew, she hired them, and she kept tabs on them every day and all of their movement. She gave them Wednesdays off, but she still followed them and kept track of them on Wednesdays as well. So at the end of the day, when we think of human traffickers, they're not always guys. Sometimes they're women. And then the second human trafficker that we've charged is from Chicago. Did I mention to you that he's here illegally? That's right. He's come here illegally to victimize people in the United States. And here's the victim that he was trafficking. He loaned her $2,200 to repair a vehicle, and she didn't have the money to pay it back. So he said, "You're going to have to do prostitution." He set up all the appointments. He made arrangements for transportation, and he was taking 60 to 70% of the money once again. Keep in mind that He was not only here illegally, but he set this woman up. Now, we calculated based upon what they were charging and how long he had her doing this, and he had made a whole lot of interest on that $2,200. Then there is these two ladies. These two ladies came to engage in sex. They're friends. Jamara Bradley, who's 27, and Ada Gray. Jamara's from Sanford, Ada's from Lakeland, and they brought the 14-month-old child with them. I didn't stutter. They brought a 14-month-old child. But hey, no worry, they had it figured out. Why Bradley was having sex, Gray was going to watch the baby, and why Gray was going to have sex, then Bradley was going to watch the baby. That's right. Well, we turned the child over immediately to DCF, who was on the premises, and they took the baby and placed it with a family member. Both of them, when I ask, are they employed? Not legally. Their only employment is doing prostitution. That's 2 for 1. Then there's Adam Trotter from Davenport. Adam's 31. He left his 1-year-old daughter at home by herself while he came to this location to have sex. Not really. He said the dog was watching the baby. Did you hear? Did you hear what I said? We interviewed the dog, and the dog said, "Wolf." I guess that means yes in dog language. So we went to the house, and we rescued the baby, turned it over to DCF. DCF immediately made sure the baby had services. The dog said, "I'll hang out here till he gets out of jail." We made sure the dog had food and water, so y'all chill out now. We didn't see any need to put the dog in dog jail, okay? David Green's from Massachusetts. He's an air conditioner contractor, and he's a special kind of guy. He's 42 years of age, and he's divorced from his wife, and she lives in South Florida. But David, being the kind of wonderful dad he is, flew to South Florida to pick up his daughter because he wanted to celebrate her 15th birthday. So he brought her up to the attractions and promptly left her in the room while he went out to have sex. Here you go, daughter. You enjoyed television in a motel room in Central Florida. Dad's going to be gone for a while. So for his daughter's birthday, he celebrated by wanting to have sex. Now, we call ex-mom. You know, ex-spouses are sometimes difficult anyway. To say that she was angry would be an understatement. But she came and picked up the 15-year-old. Well, I'd like to wish the 15-year-old a happy birthday. For her birthday, we arrested her dad and put him in the jail. So that's where he spent the birthday weekend. Then there's Russell Rogers from Winter Haven. This is a now photo, okay? This is a photo of him in the county jail. He came to have sex. You want to see a before photo? This is Russ Rogers, the athletic director at Vanguard School. And he also is a teacher at Auburndale High School Real Academy. He's married. He's got 3 children. Now, we've arrested him, right? He's in custody, and he says, "Hey, dudes, y'all got to hurry up." And we go, "Why?" He said, "Well, it's my wife and daughter." What about them? "Well, they're arriving at the airport in Orlando. I got to go get them." We said, "Hey, coach, you fumbled that one because you're going to be in jail, and we're going to have to get them a ride home because you're not going to make it." He had been a coach several times, head coach of some football teams, not only in Florida but in other areas. And he currently is not a head football coach, but a coach at Vanguard and Auburndale High. Now, here's the interesting part. Not only did he negotiate to have sex, he negotiated to have sex with a lady without protection. And then he's going to go home to his wife. We know historically a lot of these ladies have STDs. So was that a welcome home gift that he potentially could have given to his wife? This dude now is coaching in the county jail. I can't believe that we'd want somebody like this around our children. Then we have James Williams from Atlanta. He's a big-time Miami Dolphin fan, and of course he was elated. I think Miami won by 70 to almost nothing. So he flew from Miami to Orlando. He decided that before he went back to Atlanta, where he lived, don't know why he made a stop here, that he would engage a lady for prostitution. Did I mention that he's the CEO of a disaster recovery business headquartered in California? And he showed up with cocaine, but he didn't just show up with cocaine. He had like his Miami Dolphins shirt and hat. He was celebrating the victory. Well, we celebrated the Dolphin victory too with his arrest. He went to the county jail, and no, he didn't get to keep the Dolphin shirt in the county jail. And then there's Stephen Borston from California. He's the CFO for Paradise Valley Estates, a retirement community in California in the Sacramento area. You know what he said? He was bold. He said, "This is unfair. It's not against the law." I always like it when they know the law better than we do. It's not against the law to cheat on your wife. So he came here all the way from California to cheat on his wife, but he paid money to cheat on his wife. It's called prostitution. So we had to educate him as to the laws of the state of Florida. So he went to jail. I wonder if he took some of, being the CFO, if he took any of the Paradise Valley Estates retirement fund money to have this trip down here where he wanted to cheat on his wife, which wasn't illegal, so he thought. Maybe in California it works like that. But newsflash, he wasn't in California. Then there's Kenneth Green from Davenport. He works for Disney. He's a training coordinator. What would an op be if we didn't arrest somebody that was employed by Disney? Then there's Marquise Nixon. Newsflash, he works for Disney. He works in security. And then there's Carlos Rote from Davenport. Newsflash, he works for Disney. He's a custodian. He's married. You know, I don't know what his wife thought about it, but Disney wasn't happy. Newsflash, Zachary Vu works at the Swan Hotel at Disney. The Swan is a separate entity, but it's on Disney property. Then there was William Tu. So we had William Tu and William Vu. He's a surgical tech. Came to the op after working as a DJ at a high school homecoming dance. More news. Look at this face. Don't have him around your kids being a DJ at high school dances. And I don't know where he was a surgical tech, but if you're laying on the gurney and you look up and you see this dude, grab your split tail gown and run. Come back later for your operation. Stephanie Amos from Kissimmee. She's a dental assistant by day, and she's a prostitution deliverer of services by night. Y'all expected me to say something about all of that, but y'all gonna have to fill in the blanks. I can't do it, it's X-rated, but she was in possession of cocaine too. But if you show up at a dental appointment and you see her, you never know where her hands have been, okay? I'm just saying. Marina Perez from Kissimmee. She said she's a flight attendant for Southwest Airlines. Kind of brings a new meaning to want to get away. Or you're free to move about the cabin. Well, she's free to move about the county jail. She was going to have sex. See, she brought her husband with her. It was kind of a creepy deal. So next time you see her on Southwest, if she really works for them, you might say, "Where's your husband?" Frank Bydark, he's from Claremont. This guy's just a freak. He wanted to do all kinds of nasty stuff. He's 76 years old. 76 years old. And he wanted to do a lot of nasty stuff. He's an Air Force veteran. And then there's Jason Wynn. Jason Wynn is 48. He's from Kissimmee. He came with crack cocaine. He's married. And he said he lives in prison. And we said, "Would you explain that to us? What do you mean you live in prison?" He said, "Living with my wife's like being in prison." And I went, "Dude, you're already in trouble. And you're bad-mouthing your wife while you're trying to get the services of a prostitute." He's got 4 kids. He moved to Florida 2 months ago. Welcome to Florida. Welcome to Polk County. Okay, so when you look at some of these Johns, you think, wow, how could they do that? But I want to go over the dumbest one that we've ever had. All right? This guy has marshmallows for brains. So he's coming to the undercover location. Our undercover operative, who is simply the very best. She works every op with us. She works for the Lakeland Police Department. She's fantastic. As he's coming to the op, we have to stop a car out in front of the undercover house. So there's the blue lights and the red lights. She immediately gets on the phone and says, "Don't come here, don't come here. The cops are out in the road." Wait. Well, he shows up to see the cops. And she texted him and said, "The cops are clear." He said, "Yeah, I know. What were they doing?" And she said, "Well, there's a warrant." "Well, how do you know there's a warrant?" "Well, I'm curious. I ran out there and heard one cop tell the other, there's a warrant." So he pulls down at the end of the road and watches another guy come into the undercover op. And he says, "Who's that guy going in there?" She said, "That's my brother. Don't worry about it." And in a few minutes, a female goes in. "I'm watching another one enter. Who is that?" "It's my sister." "Don't worry about it. Just wait. I'm busy." In a few minutes, the undercover op texts him, "Come on in. I'm ready." You can't make this stuff up. The dude went in. He showed up. Did you hear me? Did you hear what I said? This guy, after watching the cops in the street and watching a guy go in, a girl go in, and not come out, he showed up. I was there. I saw it. I shared with him the fact that, "Mister, I've watched hundreds of arrests. You win the trophy." That is the dumbest action I've ever seen. He didn't get it at all. I'm going to turn this over now. First, we're going to have Assistant Chief Marvin Tarver, then Chief Velasquez, and Chief, let's see, who else is going to talk? Chief Parker. They're going to speak to you a little bit from their perspective of the police departments. After that, Jody Domain, Katie Ann Parchment, and Mary Ann Thomas will speak to you, and then we'll take questions, okay? So, Chief, come on up.
Yes, sir. All right. Okay, thank you, Sheriff. And I thank everyone for being here today. I want to say good morning to you. Human trafficking is a heinous crime that preys on the vulnerability of countless individuals. It's the kind of crime that knows no boundaries. You know, it affects people of all ages, of all genders, and all backgrounds. And it's just imperative that the Lakeland Police Department, the Polk County Sheriff's Department, and all law enforcement agencies address this issue to bring these people who perpetrate this crime to justice. And today I just want to thank Sheriff Judd for his unwavering stance against human trafficking. I also want to thank the men and women of law enforcement who work tirelessly, you know, to bring these people to justice. And then the service organizations represented here today that do all they can do to help restore those who have been victimized by this crime. The Lakeland Police Department will continue to work with the Sheriff's Department and all the agencies represented here to deal with this crime, to eradicate this grave violation of human rights, and to ensure that we can live in a safe and a just community. Thank you.
Good morning. First of all, I'd like to thank all of the men and women of the law enforcement agencies that participated in this operation. Without them, this would not have been such a success. Many, many, many hours of hard work, of just dirty work, nasty things that people don't like to think about. They did a great job, so hats off to them. You know, you heard that a lot of people were arrested. A lot of people were. Not everybody went to jail. Not everybody is going to be prosecuted. You're going to hear shortly about how this is also a turning point, or it's an opportunity to have a turning point in their life. Services are offered. People can get their lives back on track, even the people who were arrested for the crimes. It's a turning point. Make a decision and get things right. To the critics, because there's always going to be people that say, again, as the sheriff said, it's a victimless crime. You've heard that. What if it was your child? Think about that. Whether it was your child as a young person or as a grown adult, they need some kind of intervention and they need some kind of help. So they have an opportunity now. Last, to people who might be thinking about it, it amazes me the number of people who will do it time and time again, even after they get arrested. Looks way too good to be true. A lot of times they'll say that. It may not be what you expect when you're on the computer or you're on the phone. You may be getting ready to walk into a robbery. You may be showing up and the person you think you're going to have sex with, that's an adult, could be a child, or it could be us. And many times, more than not, it is going to be us. So to those who are thinking about it, we just encourage you not to mess around and find out. Thank you.
Good morning. You know, as we see by these pictures, this is a continuing problem. I mean, as the sheriff said, there are people that are repeatedly arrested for this over and over and over again. Apparently, they just don't learn. You know, Davenport is a small but rapidly growing community. And to have something like this so close to our community, in our community, you know, we stand next to the sheriff and his team to fight this. I mean, we'll do whatever we can to try to eradicate this problem continuing. Again, just like my colleagues, I want to thank all the hard-working men and women of law enforcement that came out for this operation. Davenport supported them with a total of 6 officers and detectives through the week-long process, and we're proud to do that, and we will continue to do that. Every operation, we are committed to have somebody at these operations to stand alongside the detectives. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jody Domingue, and I'm the Executive Director of Anti-Trafficking for One More Child. We have anti-trafficking services across the state of Florida, in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Ohio. But this partnership with the Polk County Sheriff's Office and these operations is by far our longest standing and most precious relationship. At each of these, we are able to have our expert staff who consist of advocates, lived experience experts, and trauma therapists, yes, right there on the ground to offer services in people's most critical moments. And because of that, we were able to have 5 victims of trafficking identified immediately, not arrested, and brought to safe shelter. But for us, our most important work is after, the day after, and when we continue to follow up. We've been able to talk to and follow up with 87 individuals to assist them in providing a path for a life to self-sufficiency and out of the life of sexual exploitation. And I want to share with you a bit why it's important that although people can't be identified the night of, we show up anyways. In 2018, Sarah showed up to a Polk County Sheriff's Office operation, and she was mad. We say she was feisty, she was spicy, she was cussing out law enforcement. She broke off her cuffs 2 different times, but she had showed up with a man who might have been a trafficker. So as they always do, the Sheriff's Office let us bring her into a private room and ask her some questions. And Sarah said, "I am not a trafficking victim. I choose to do this. I love this life, and I don't need your help." Well, we talked to Sarah the following day, and we asked her, how did you get into this life? And Sarah shared what we hear time and time again. She said, at 13 years old, I was running away from an abusive foster home. And when I was on the streets, I had to trade sex for a place to stay. Now, we kept up with Sarah for many years. She would call and thank us. She said, your staff are the first people that believed that I was worth more than a life in the street doing prostitution. Well, I received a phone call about 6 months ago, and it was Sarah. And she was in the car, and she said, "Miss Jody, I wanted you to be my last call." She said, "I am on my way to a program, and I am ready and committed to officially turn my life around." And yes, we're playing the long game. It took some time, but because of this partnership and because of that night many years ago for Sarah, she's able now to receive the services that she very much desires and needs. So, Sheriff Judd, Polk County Sheriff's officers, the agencies here today, thank you for your continued partnership, for the ability to impact many, many Sarahs, and we are so excited to impact many more. And listen, if your story is like Sarah's, please know there is help for you out there. There are services that can provide hope and self-sufficiency and a new future for you. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Katie M. Parchment. I'm the Resiliency Coordinator for Heartland for Children. We are the lead agency under the Department of Children and Families that cover the child welfare system for Polk, Highlands, and Hardee counties. First, I would like to thank Sheriff Judd for encouraging the collaboration always among agencies during these operations and recognizing that early intervention is important and critical to not only helping people overcome the trauma that they're facing, but then also to help reduce the recurrence of this taking place again. Heartland for Children's mission is to improve safety, permanency, and well-being for children in Polk, Highlands, and Hardee's counties. One important way of ensuring this is by helping parents build parental resilience and appropriate coping mechanisms to address their trauma. During this operation, we encountered a number of people with children. We are thankful that we were able to provide resources and assistance such as Hope Florida and findhelp.org to help families have the tools needed to be individual gain individual parenting skills without the need for intervention from the Department of Children and Families. There were countless law enforcement officers and NGO personnel that demonstrated compassion, empathy, and care while interacting with these victims of human trafficking that were recovered. This trauma-informed approach is modeled throughout our services as well, and so it's wonderful to see it happening on the law enforcement end and then transition over to our services end. Before I go, I would like to encourage any parents who feel overwhelmed or if they need to step into this life to reach out for help. The Department of Children and Families, Heartland for Children, One More Child, Sail of Freedom, we are all there to help. Ask for help, reach out for help, because we want to be able to help sustain your family without the need for intervention and without the need for a life of trafficking or trauma as a result of prostitution. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Mary Ann Thomas, and my organization is My Name, My Voice. First of all, thank you to Sheriff Judd and thank you to all of the fine men and women that you see here today. Thank you to Polk County Sheriff's Office, Lake County Sheriff's Office, my new friends there, and all of the police departments that you see today. Sheriff Judd recognized years ago that while the detectives, deputies, and officers have contact with victims of all types of crime nearly every day, they don't have many resources for those they meet. To help his team serve victims well, the sheriff invited all of the NGOs you see here today to stand in and to assist victims on every human trafficking operation. That one decision has resulted in all identified victims being recovered and released to their dreams. It resulted in dozens more recognizing that there is another life out there for them, and it afforded those individuals opportunities to change their life. For the NGOs you see up here and the individuals we serve, this doesn't end when the operation does. We continue to encourage the individuals we have met to take the steps necessary to change their life. We help them find the services they need in the language they speak, in the place they want to live. We continue to offer support, encouragement, and gentle nudges to assist them in making hard steps in creating a new life. We teach them that to have a new life, you have to create a new community. And then we follow that up with introducing them to even more service providers to build that safe and healthy community. For all of you watching today, please educate yourself about human trafficking, what it really looks like, what grooming and recruitment are, and the dangers online that are often the first step into being trafficked. And finally, for the people who I met this week, I am sorry that this is how we had to meet, but I am glad that we had a chance to talk. Thank you for allowing me to sit with you in a tough moment. Thank you for listening to me as I shared why I do this work. Thank you for sharing with me your own struggles and how you ended up in that room. And I meant what I said. You do not have to do this. You are worth so much more. Call any one of those numbers that you received. The people on the other end want to help. Just try. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff, you mentioned that the human traffickers, you don't always arrest alleged human traffickers in these operations. Can you speak more to the challenges with arresting these people, and also with these two in particular, do you think there are more victims out there?
There certainly are more victims out there, and we are always on the search for victims. Many times those that are forced into being victims of human traffickers are scared to death of the trafficker. For example, in this one occasion, the lady that was the human trafficker, she's from the same area in Venezuela. She gave the implicit idea that I know your family in Venezuela. It goes from veiled threats to outright threats. We'll hurt you, we'll kill you, we'll cut off your drugs, we'll cut off your way of life. There won't be any more food, there won't be any more shelter. You see, they many times grab these victims off of the streets. They provide shelter, clothes, food, drugs, and then they indenture them into this horrible life of prostitution. And then they scare them. They're scared to death of these human traffickers. And more times than not, overwhelmingly more times than not, they will not, the victims will not give up their human trafficker. We think it's wonderful this time that we found two, and we believe we're going to be able to charge two more. We still have some investigative work to do. We go an entire operation, and we know the trafficker is there. Many times they get charged with deriving proceeds from driving them there to the scene, the victims. However, the victims won't talk. Some of the toughest victims we deal with are victims of human trafficking. So if they don't talk, we make the best case we can with the evidence we have at the time.
Sheriff, can you provide some more clarity on how the victims and the suspects are able to cross the border and then how they end up here in Florida?
Well, they hook up with a coyote, all right? Last operation, we had 4 ladies that came to the operation. They went from Cuba to Guatemala. In Guatemala, they met the coyote or and that person said, hey, for this amount of money, I will get you into the United States. And, well, I don't have that money. Well, do we have a deal for you? We'll move you into a job, and you stay with us until you pay us off. The job just happens to be prostitution. Every day, the coyotes move people across that southern border. Some of them operate from the southern border. Some of them are picking them up once they're inside the United States. But they're paying to get here, and or they're paying for transportation after they get here. Many of the people that are coming across that southern border illegally are victims, are being victimized. Some of the people coming across that southern border are trying to come here for a better way of life for them and their families. And then they're being met with the criminals. And once the criminals get them here, what are you going to do? You can't call the cops. You're here illegally. I brought you here. I own you. We have seen victims that were actually tattooed or branded with their trafficker's name or nickname. So this is a real deal, and it's happening every moment of every day across the south border with all the other crime that's occurring there. And of course, people continue to ignore, this administration continues to ignore, this federal administration continues to ignore the fact that we've got a crisis at the southern border. It's not just the people coming here illegally. If that were the sum total of all of this, you wouldn't have a lot. That is the tip of the iceberg about all the people that are coming here, all the fentanyl. They're killing more people with fentanyl across the southern border than we lost in major wars in this country by the day or by the year. So when are we going to wake up? When are we going to wake up and say a lot of the people coming across the southern border are also being victimized as well as coming here illegally? When are they going to wake up and understand that there's thousands upon thousands of kids and folks being killed by the drugs that's smuggled? And they'll push a group of people over here, and why immigration and the border people are busy there, then they turn out and run the suspects or the drugs, or specifically the coyotes will bring these folks across in a different area. So at the end of the day, it's a monumental problem. Yes, ma'am.
How many of the trafficking victims came from across the border?
We can give you that number. I don't know off the top of my head, but some of them did.
Do you feel there'll be additional trafficking victims identified out of those who were arrested?
Oh, I believe so. Yes, absolutely. Because not all of the victims that we see here admitted to being victims. Some of them are dug in. But as Jody just explained, we plant the seeds in every operation. Now, from a 2018 case, we see the lady 5 years later change her life and call back to Jody and say, thank you for your work 5 years ago. So some of what we've done here won't bloom into a success story for years and years. Some of it will immediately. But folks, the bottom line is anybody who thinks this is two adults entering into a consensual business relationship for sex and money is wrong. They're so wrong. They're absolutely wrong. Wake up and understand what's really happening here. Yes, ma'am.
I know of the people arrested, the youngest age given was 18. I know it was stated some people weren't arrested. Were there any minors among those who appeared?
I don't believe we saw any minors that were prostituting this time. We have seen them in the past. Anything else? God bless you. God bless the United States of America, and God bless all of our teams that work so very hard on this. See y'all later.